Thanks, guys, for having me today. I've always, I was born in Mexico City, and then we kind of migrated to Los Angeles when I was very young, all the way up to high school, and then I came to Northern California, and that's how I kind of found the cooking part of what I do now. It's been a long ride, I would say. I think. Being a chef in San Francisco, it's very rewarding at the end of the day. And I think that being able to grow up in Napa, I was very humbled to kind of grow up with a lot of good wine, a lot of great chefs, a lot of great restaurants, and kind of mimic to hopefully one day operate a restaurant of my own. But now I'm the chef at a restaurant called Spruce here in San Francisco. Yeah, so.
Yeah. So, thank you. So, tell us a little bit more about your story.
Yeah.
How do you start your career as a chef?
Yeah. So it all started just giving light to being in Northern California. I didn't know anything about cooking per se prior to coming to Northern California. I actually wanted to do two things when I was in high school. I wanted to either join the army or be an actor. Like those were the two things that I really, really wanted to do right after high school. And then I had an aunt that lived in Yountville, and my mother's like, we're gonna leave Los Angeles. We're gonna come to Northern California, and we're gonna come to, we're gonna find a new home. I don't know anything about San Francisco, anything like that. I think at the time I was 15 when I came. And my mother, she was a single mother with 3 kids. So I always saw her struggle with rent and stuff like that. So I was like, I need to get a job. I really want to help her out. I want to help with the rent, things like that. So my aunt that invited us to come live in Northern California, they've always worked in restaurants for like 20 years. So I asked them, hey, I really want to get a job. Is there a possibility to maybe get a part-time at a restaurant? So I did, and that kind of blew my mind. And I was like, as soon as I stepped in the kitchen, just the smells, the whole kind of brotherhood in a restaurant, being able to express yourself through food and through experiences, I would say, kind of just I wanted to do that for a living. That's what I wanted to call my career. I remember that the lingering thought of joining the army was still there right after I was gonna graduate. So I talked to, I became friends with one of my chefs that gave me my first job. And I asked them, I was like, hey, I really want to join the army, but I'm not sure what route to take. I don't know if I should go to the army or continue cooking. And he said, I always remember these words. He was like, the worst thing you can do in a kitchen is you can break a plate. And the worst thing that can happen in the army is you get shot and you can get killed. So I was like, okay, well, that's it. I'm gonna be a chef.
It's a decision, right?
Yeah. So that's it, and that's how it kind of all began. I think at that point, you definitely have to work hard. You definitely have to read a lot of books and cookbooks. I was never like a reader in high school, but as soon as I opened a cookbook or just get inspired through chefs, through their restaurants or the recipes, I think that's going to make me to buy more books and kind of inspire myself to be to become a better chef every day. So.
Right. And if I understand correctly, you wanted to go to culinary school, but you actually ended up not going to school.
I did. I researched it a lot. I looked at a school in Florida. There was at that time. Hyde Park. The CIA it's like the biggest school. I think until now. So you're able to stay in the campus and do the whole thing. But I was like, I don't think I'm able to afford that. And then I went to a local cooking school right in the middle of St. Helena and Calistoga. I walked in and I wanted to join, but I couldn't afford it. And I had 2 kids when I was very young. So I was like, I'm just gonna choose a chef who I admire, who's doing what I want to do one day. And I'm just gonna work for them and do that instead. So yeah,
That's
that's how
impressive.
it kind of started.
Yeah, yeah. So how was the experience of your first job? Like, how do you get into the restaurant? What restaurant was it? And,
It was the first job I had was it was it was an Italian restaurant that did like country Italian food, and it was very rustic, and you know, as soon as you walk in, people are rushing, they're in and out. The whole brigade of like discipline, everything. Just I was just like, this is what I want to do, you know, and trying to go to high school and run down to Yountville and work was kind of a challenge because I was trying to graduate, but I was trying to make money with my job 5 days a week, and just trying to balance that was a bit difficult at times. I would be an hour late to high school, or because I had to stay late the night before, because I was a dishwasher, so I couldn't leave till like 1 or 2 a.m. So that cycle was just like, you know, it really, I was like, oh wow, this is like being a grown up. This is what I, you know, like trying to juggle both school and a job at the same time. So, but then when I graduated high school, I took it on full. So and I really researched uh, what I want to do and the kind of food that I wanted to do. And at that time, there was a lot of French restaurants and Italian restaurants. So there was nothing, I would say, out of that. Like you never saw a fine dining Mexican restaurant or a fine dining. You saw Japanese, but not anything of any smaller country, I would say.
okay.
So that just thinking of my roots and the food that I grew up with, the food that my mother cooked when I was young. I always, in the back of my mind, I was like, this. I want to do Mexican food in the future, but I want to do it with like a fine dining kind of touch,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of give a voice to Latin America you know, of the food that we do. That it's not just burritos and tacos. There's a lot of history in Latin America, from all over the world, and I think it needs to, you know, if we're able to bring it up to Northern California, it'll be a great restaurant. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
So I know you work at a very good French restaurants. You want to share your story about?
Yeah,
Uh,
you know, I worked for Thomas Keller in Yountville. I mean, it was kind of a given. You kind of hear the stories of Thomas and his restaurants, how successful he is. And just working for him taught me a lot of different things, not just cooking, but I think as the way you carry yourself as a businessman. Um, and then I think also as well as just discipline, not just in the kitchen, but you know, eating right, exercising, having a healthy lifestyle. I think all that kind of played into being a chef because, you know, being in a restaurant is very demanding. I always look at it like a sport. It's very demanding, and it's very you miss a lot of things with you know, like family gatherings, holidays, stuff like that. So it's very, you know, being in that kitchen really tests me in a way where is this what I really want to do, or should I just walk away now? You know, and so I kept going, and eventually after cooking in Napa and Napa Valley for like 15 years, then I decided to go on to San Francisco, and search a bigger city, instead of, you know, Napa Valley. So
wow. And what do you think that make you stand out of the crowd? Like you were, you know, making your career and pushing, and somehow you get these opportunities to work at great restaurants. Like, what makes the difference between Rogelio and other chefs?
I think number one is hard work. You know, I think in whatever you do, I always tell the, you know, the younger cooks, or if anybody always asks for advice, I always say whatever you choose to do, you just got to put the work in, you know, and you really got to do your homework. It's not just in the restaurant, but outside. You know, you got to really think, if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, or a chef, you really got to think about, you know, you have to go home and dream about food, and that's something you can't really, you know, you can teach somebody how to cook and how to be a chef and how to make a recipe, but to teach somebody how to be passionate about what they do, and come back and try to get better every day, that's hard to find, and it has to be something within you that kind of comes out. Um, and I think just being in Napa Valley, I think, I'm very humble that it kind of gave me a step up because it was hard not to find a good restaurant in Napa or good wineries or a great chef that would kind of take you under your wing and show you the way they did it. And I've been very fortunate to, through my career to work with chefs, but also keep in contact with them and always be able to reach back and say, hey, this is at the point of my career. What do you think? And they always give me the best advice they can because they've been there and they've done it. So
Yeah, yeah, I think that's an important part of growing the mentorship. You had great
exactly.
mentors apparently, and how did the mentorship help you to develop your career? How do you find the mentors?
Well, I think it doesn't need to be like a. For me, it doesn't need to be like a star chef. I would say it could be just a friend that gives you great advice, or might not have a lot of accolades, but definitely I look into the people that do have them, and I always touch back, and ask the questions because they've been there. It's kind of like a parent, but in the whatever industry you're in, and you always tap back and say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is kind of what I want to do. What do you think? Is this a good idea? And they always try to give you the best advice because they've been there and they've done it. But the whole industry is kind of shifting now. It's very different than when I started cooking. Um, and so you have to kind of adapt. And cooking always evolves. It's always evolving. It's always changing. So you kind of just adapt to the situation, especially in San Francisco because San Francisco it's the mecca of America. It's become neck and neck with New York of just cooking and finding great food and great restaurants, but it's also become very expensive to operate a restaurant or just even if it's any business in San Francisco. It's very, very expensive to just operate it, and just to get it off the ground. It's super tremendous to just get off the ground, and to continue it is very difficult as well. So,
Yeah, I mean, who you consider your best mentor so far?
um, I would say I would say Tracy Desjardins.
Mhm.
She's a female chef. She was one of the first female chefs to kind of make her name in San Francisco, and just being a female and a chef in the '90s was very difficult. And I think that I kind of see like a kind of like a mother figure in her, and I would say just I kind of see what my mother went through and how the difficult she had as well, um, in America, and she's half French and half Mexican. So she kind of understands like the whole Latin America, and her favorite food is Mexican. So I think that I always reach back to her for advice, and she's helped a lot of people, a lot of younger chefs, and a lot of people who are trying to get the restaurants off the ground, or just in general, just with advice. So I would say her probably,
Wow,
yeah.
that's very powerful. And talking about a little bit more of mundane things, how's your day-to-day life? How's the life of a chef?
Well, I mean, the day-to-day life, like kind of like I said, you miss a lot of holidays, a lot of important days, stuff like that. But you try to find that balance of taking care of the restaurant, and taking care of your, I call them the family at work, because you need to have a strong team to operate a restaurant, and it's always checking in with your team, because they themselves, just being a cook in San Francisco and being a cook at a high-end restaurant, I understand the struggles that they go through because I went through those struggles as a cook. They don't make a lot of money. They're at minimum wage. Some are coming from, an hour and a half away to come work at Spruce or for me. So I'm very humbled to have that. So I always try to give back in any way that I can, whether advice or if I can help them in anything. And it can be as simple as like, hey, my car broke down. I need an Uber. So we'll call an Uber either here or there. And it's just trying to find that balance from work to your your personal life. I have two kids, so They, my son started high school this year. The other one, he's got one more year in middle school, and then he's off to high school. So trying to find that balance of being in their life, and then trying to operate a restaurant. It's it's trying to just find that. So
Yeah, that is
yeah,
awesome,
yeah,
and it's awesome that they're here visiting us
they're
as
here.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah, your family is
yeah,
supporting you,
yeah.
and I'm impressed that your family is here. So I think they look up to you, right? I think you're a role model for them. Or how do you see yourself within your family?
Well, I mean, uh, yeah, I mean, I think they I remember one day that my son asked me. He had a report he had to do, the oldest one. I think he had to be like in kindergarten, his first year, and he asked me, "Hey, we had to do this project of like what he wanted to do when he grew up," and he was like, "I want to be a chef," and I was like, "I don't know if you really want to do that. I want to double think that. But it goes back to the same thing. Like it whatever you do, you have to put the work in. And a lot of the times, like people might not notice it, or but it does come out in the end. And and also surrounding yourself with people who want the same thing that you want. That's another thing. Because you have to have people around you that they're either think the same way you do, or even are able to bring something to the table that you might not thought about, in whatever industry you choose to be in. So
Yeah.
I think that's important.
So in specific in cooking, if you were able to go back in time, or you meet a Rogelio that is way younger than you, starting their career, what advice would you give them?
Ooh, that's a good one. Uh, I would probably say be a little more patient. I would say, in a restaurant, being patient is not, you don't really have that luxury. People come in, they want what they want. We work against the clock all the time. So in your mind, when you grew up in a restaurant, like you become impatient. That's something that you kind of just are, because you're always rushing against the clock. So I would say maybe be a little more patient. I think I would give that to myself as a younger self.
All right.
So
And talking about your food, lot of questions about your food. What's your favorite dish?
I don't think the menu at Spruce changes often. And I think we really try to hit a couple points. It's just being creative. I think that's a big thing, because it fulfills you as a chef. You're able to express yourself with whatever you see at the markets or whatever's in season. I think that's the number one. Um, but I think it also has to taste great. It has to taste good. But I think just being um, I wouldn't say unnecessarily a dish. And I think as I get older, I tap back into my roots. And I would say, instead of a dish, I would say it's more cooking Mexican food and researching that. Because I feel like when I grew up in the industry, I cooked a lot of Italian and French, and I kind of neglected my roots, because I didn't have any inspiration to go back, right? But now, there's more authors that are writing Mexican cookbooks, or and more chefs that are kind of rising, that are Latin. I think that I go back and I'm like, oh wow, like these are things that I want to do in the future. So instead of a dish, I would say maybe a cuisine. I would say Mexican food, or just Latin America. I mean, Peru has a lot of good food as well. Um, there's a lot of discipline in the food as well. So
So, and in general, what do you want to communicate with your food? Whenever you're making a dish, what do you want to share to the people who are going to be eating that dish?
I think it's just great ingredients, and they're not manipulated. I would say in a lot of ways, and it's just good food, and it's creative, and it's seasonal, it's local, and it's based on supporting local farmers, and I think farmers, or just agriculture, is going through a big change as well, because it's hard to find labor. or people that want to do agriculture like they wanted to do it back in like 15, 20 years ago. And or like why would you want to work in the fields out when you can work at in an office
Yeah.
Monday to Friday. So I think agriculture is it's a huge thing. And I go to the farms and we visit them and we visit people who make cheese or uh, people who dry their own meats, people that are just local or grow beautiful apples or stone fruits or tomatoes. And you can see that nobody wants to do that kind of work anymore. So it's very difficult for them. So I think being able to highlight what they do, and that's how they feed their families through what we get at the restaurant, and be able to highlight that and put it on a plate. It's huge, I would say. So I always try to give back and give thanks to the people who actually grow the tomatoes, who are in the fields for 12 hours in the 100-degree weather, and are also working very, very hard. So I think that's kind of what we try to bring to the table.
Oh, that is awesome. Yeah, and in that realm, what are your viewpoints in terms of sustainable food, fair trade? Those are topics that are nowadays very present here in San Francisco.
It is. Yeah, I mean, I think, and also just eating healthy. I think that's another thing. I think that people don't realize that whatever you consume uh, in your body also makes you think that way. I think that I myself, as I keep getting older, I try to eat better. And I think that we see it in the restaurant where people want to eat better, and the things that are healthier is what sometimes sell a little bit more. So we try to adjust the menu to be a little healthier as well. But also, I mean, we use a lot of local ingredients, and we use a lot of local purveyors. So and it's also when you get, for example, like strawberries at the peak. I mean, they're the sweetest, they're the healthiest. When you get pumpkins in the winter, they're the sweetest and the healthiest as well. They're more nutrients. So if you cook with the seasons, you're already there or halfway there. So and I think that's a big thing in San Francisco as well. People want to eat healthier now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And now about your awards or working for Michelin star restaurants. What is the feeling of, or what does it mean for you to work for a Michelin star restaurant?
I think it was always a goal for me to. I mean, it's a goal for every chef, right? To have a star, right? But I think you have a responsibility. I think as well. So it comes with a lot of responsibility, and that responsibility is to for the people that walk in the door, that you give them the best the best food you can, the wine, the service, the whole atmosphere, and that they leave happy when they leave the restaurant. I think that's a big responsibility. Because in restaurants, there's so many things and so many factors that can happen, that can go wrong, and so to be able to have it in a climate like today, it's very humbling, but it's also a big responsibility. So we try to instill that you know, in everybody. I don't think it's just myself. I mean, I do lead the team, but if I didn't have a strong team behind me and younger cooks who want to better themselves in the future and be restaurant owners or be chefs one day, and then pushing themselves pushes everything forward. So I think a lot of things has to be done to the people at the bottom as well, or like I said, like the farmers. I think that's a big thing.
How can we know more about the work that you've been doing? I mean, of course, we can go to Spruce, but do you have cookbooks or blogs, or is there any way that we can follow the stuff that you're working
I have
on?
my Instagram, and you can follow my Instagram. It's Chef Rogelio Garcia. But I think a lot. It all the core comes from the restaurant. From number one is being able to inspire the people in the restaurant, and being able to have them in a place where they know there's hope and that it'll get better for them in the future as either becoming a chef or a restaurant owner. But I think as far as like the outside, I think that you know, I'm hopefully trying to go to San Quentin to kind of feed some of the inmates in the fall or the winter, hopefully by the holidays. And it's kind of an interesting story because there's a restaurant in San Francisco who did it, and I kind of got inspired through that. And just to hear their stories, or just to have them have a little bit of hope, I would say. That's one thing. And also, just being able to maybe talk to schools. I've done classes where there's kids involved, and they, we do like either like a baking class, or like, how to grow your own vegetables, because that's another thing. In when I was in elementary school and middle school, like we didn't, schools didn't offer the healthiest foods, when you're in school. And I think now people are starting to realize that when you start eating healthy at that age, it really helps you in the future. So in schools, I see that they're showing kids how to grow their own vegetables, tomatoes, and how to prepare them from when they're a seed all the way to like when you start eating a tomato. So I think that's a kind of neat thing that is happening now.
Oh wow! Well, thank you for doing all the paying forward. Because
Yeah, I mean, I
that's
wish I could do more, but
what else would you like to do?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, I think maybe more schools. I do have a friend who's very into giving back. He's in the East Coast, and he works with a lot of schools and goes and talks to schools about how to implement a better system of healthy eating, and he does it all through New York City. But I think I have kids, so I think it's important for me that they eat healthy or healthier. So I think that would be a subject that I would love to kind of tap more into and do it more. But one day.
One day.
Yeah.
Well, to wrap up, I guess my final question will be: do you think you're living the so-called American dream?
Well, it all depends on what that means. I would say, is it be the leader of your craft? Is it to own a restaurant? Is it to be a chef and that's it? I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Is it, then you go into the whole politics thing. Is it really, all that kind of stuff? But I mean, I would say, everything's evolving, and there's more light being shed on how the industry used to be and how it should be. And as far as like American Dream, I mean, in a way, yes, and in a way, no. I think there's still a lot of work to be done. So I think that yes and no, I would say. So
Still work in progress.
yeah,
All
exactly.
right. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate it. I had the opportunity to try your food, and it's amazing.
Thank
I would
you.
recommend
Thank
it
you.
highly. And now we're gonna move on to Q&A.
I have a question. Can you share with us one of the toughest days that you had, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah. Let me see. I would say the first time that when I started cooking, I always worked in like very casual restaurants. So there was nothing like uber fine dining. And I remember that I took a job where I commuted an hour and a half away. So I lived in Napa, and I went all the way to Hillsburg. And I had to be like probably like, I would say 21, 22, right? And the chef there, he's still a really good friend of mine, and he's still very talented. And he had a restaurant that was only tasting menu, right? So it was the first time that I got like exposed to like what is really fine dining. And it was probably like 12, 13 years ago. And I remember that I was I had to work this station that I'd never worked before, right? And oh man, I had a rough day that day. I couldn't get the fish right. I was overcooking it. Like it was, and I remember that I had to come back the next day like around 7 a.m. So I had to drive back. I think I left like around 1 a.m. Drive back to my house. I got there like around 2:30. Probably slept like 4 hours, and then drive another hour and a half to the restaurant. But the whole night I was just dwelling on how bad the service went, right? Like you take that home. And then I had to come back the next day and like prove that I can do it, right? And the next day was better. But I think that is something that I always try to tell younger cooks or anybody, like, if it ever goes that bad, like go back home, think about it, and come back stronger the next day. because it's important for that's kind of like back pains and or like you being able to grow in whatever craft you're in, to be able to have those growths, it's important, you know. So I would say that was one of my worst days in working in kitchens.
First off, thanks for joining us today, for visiting us. You spoke of mentoring. I have two questions. You spoke of mentoring. Are you currently mentoring anyone right now? And the second question would be, you spoke earlier in your career about trying to balance family and work, or the work family and the home family. With success, have you found it easier to do that or harder to do that?
As far as like mentoring, yeah, I mean, I have friends who, I mean, I became a chef when I was 26, when I became a head chef at 26. So I'm 33 now. So all the way through that, I had sous chefs that work under me. And then to this day, we still kind of keep in touch with some of them. And some of them already became chefs. Some of them are still being sous chefs. But they always kind of reach back and say, hey, what do you think about that? So yeah, I mean, as far as mentoring, even the team I have now, it's always, talking to them and getting to know them, not just in the restaurant, but I think getting to know them outside. Because if they have kids, if they have family, if they're going through struggles, maybe somebody passed away. I mean, we had in the kitchen alone the holidays, there was 3 deaths in the kitchen. Not in the kitchen, but like somebody's grandma died or somebody's, uncle or somebody had an accident. So just me being there for them and saying, looking them in the face and saying, hey, are you okay today? Are you able to work? What's going on in your life? And just checking in. I think that means a lot because it means that, you have somebody who not only cares for you professionally, but also personally. And I think that that's a big thing, especially for the younger generation, because they might not have anybody to talk to but me. So I think, that's one. So, and then as far as like, finding the balance, I mean, I think it gets harder as I keep going. Uh, I do, I have, and but that's life. I think, I mean, um, I think what I wanted to be better at sometimes, yes. I mean, I wish I can be, split myself in two and be at every event that my son has, or I wish I could be there more with their homework. I wish I can be, even my relationship, I wish I could be there more. But how do you, that's something that I've always kind of had a struggle with. But any chef I know always has that struggle, or anybody in, who has a craft, who are just fully committed. It's that struggle that they always go through. So yeah, it's always finding that balance. And then it's always, I always think about like when to say, I'm gonna have the restaurant wait, and then I'm gonna spend a couple hours or times or days with my family. So at some point you got to know how to say, okay, I'm gonna hold on to this and focus 100% on my family. So yeah.
Hey, how has the Top Chef experience been for you? Like, it's put you out in front of a lot more people. Like, has that been a positive thing for you?
It does, yeah. I mean, I think that's another family, I would say. I think that we we all kind of stay very, very connected and very, we bounce back ideas, and I think that it's something that I always kind of wanted to do in the back of my mind, but I've never, I didn't research it. It kind of became like them calling me and back and forth. I did want to do it in the future, but it kind of just happened, and then doing it was very, I would say, rewarding and very inspiring to the younger generation as well. So I think, and then just the chefs that I competed against, I didn't know any of them prior to that. And then we were, locked into, in this house with no cell phones. Like, you couldn't reach anybody outside. And after, 60 days of doing that with no communication outside of the world, we became like the best friends, because we cried together, we ate together, we just went through, we smiled together. So just through the hardships of everything, we just became really good friends. And we used to joke around because we didn't have any communication outside of whatever was happening there. we always joke around and tell the producers of like, hey, is Donald Trump still president? So we would joke around. So yeah, that was a joke that we always talked about. But yeah, I mean that was the whole experience, kind of. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for coming. You talked about making Latin food high end. Oftentimes we think of Latin food como comida casera.
Right.
What was the biggest challenge you faced when trying to making it high end?
I think the biggest challenge is kind of what you say, is trying to overthink it. You know, I think that Mexican food, it's very, street food is very comforting food. There is ways to do it. It just got to be done very well. But I think the biggest challenge is just not to do it too overwhelming, where it's now you don't really know that it's Mexican or not. I think, and I think that I'm not talking about like doing things in like test tubes or stuff like that. Like still making it good, but it's still having that, the core to still be Latin. And people are always gonna, they're always gonna judge and say, hey, it's not, Mexican enough, or it's too out there. But I think it really depends on who's, your vision of what you want to do. I think, and how I look, through my lens of my experiences through cooking, how I would look of Mexican food or Latin cuisine, and how I want to kind of approach it. I think so. Just to kind of circle back, I think it's just to not overdo it too much. Yeah.
Your kids must have the best lunches at school. I'm just saying.
I guess building a little bit on that, how do you seek and process criticism and feedback, especially given people have varied tastes and a lot of people have different preferences?
Well, that's something that you kind of learn to kind of take it with a grain of salt. I think that criticism. I've dealt with it for. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 17 years, which I just think is like, where the time go. So through all that time, it's always been like criticism. But I think if you're able to take the criticism and not look at it in a negative way, but look at it as maybe a growth, right? And some people might be right, some people might be wrong, but if you really think about it and analyze it and say, you know what, maybe we do need to do this, or say, you know what, I'm doing the right thing. I think it's right. It might be a preference. I mean, you have a lot of criticism nowadays for like Yelp and Open Table and like social media alone. You just got to take it with a grain of salt. And I think that you kind of analyze it and you say, is it right or not? And then you move on. Because if you dwell on it too much, it'll kind of, you'll kind of be thinking of it too much. But I think for the most part, I think, everybody has a different palate. And I think if you exercise your palate enough, you kind of think about it. I mean, I like salt. I like salty things more than sweet things. So there's people that like sweeter things more. So it's just kind of educating and knowing yourself of how to approach it. Because if you cook for like say 100 people, there's gonna be one that might think different. So it's very challenging for sure.
Hi, Chef. Thank you
Yeah.
for coming out today. So it doesn't really matter how great your food is. If you have poor service, it's going to be a bad experience for the customer. How do you partner with the front of house, and like what are maybe some of your pet peeves that you insist, whether it's a little thing or an overall philosophy, how you get the front of house to present your food the way you want it?
Yeah. I mean, it's number one is communication. I think you have to have just like you would say to the cook, hey, this is gonna be our menu today. I'm gonna guide you through it, or I'm gonna show you how to cut this or that. It's the same thing with the front of the house. You just have to have that strong partnership in the front of open communication. And then I think one of my pet peeves is like I really like to know people that come for the first time to the restaurant, because I think that we want to leave a great impression the first time. And I think that, either they're by themselves or with a family or a couple celebrating an anniversary, it's important that I know that they're, you know, a first time diner, because you want them to keep coming back, you know, and you want them to feel good because, um, and yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter how good the food is if the service is not great. You know, it all has to come together. And you know, people, it's really hard to not find good food in San Francisco. I think at minimum you have to have good food. And the thing that is going to different everything else is service. It's going to be the small details. It's having, you know, if you're celebrating a 50-year anniversary or a birthday, or is being able to have a small touch that you know, that is, this is just for you because you came to celebrate with us. So I think that's, it's all the details. So I think that's the biggest thing. So yeah.
When I think of Mexican food, I think of like beans, squash, corn. I don't think a lot of Americans think about it that way. They think like tacos with like meat or something like that. And I'm curious about how you think about corn in the context of the difference between American, like a yellow corn, and like corn from Oaxaca, which is like a completely different thing, right? What do you think about when you think about those sort of heirloom ingredients that are really just traditional ingredients that haven't been messed with?
I mean, I think, I mean, you don't see that a lot here. I did come across a lady who, I forget her name. She's got to be like 65, right? She still goes to the farmers markets. And she's got amazing heirloom corn, actually root from Oaxaca, right? And they have it in Santa Rosa. And she's American. And she, I connected with her, and you know, she's got the whole molino of how to grind the corn and stuff. She does it there in her farm. And I was just like, wow. And I got a couple masa from her, and it was amazing. Like, it was just like if it was coming from Mexico. So, you know, there's a lot of people now being more aware of, like, you know, getting that corn. But yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, if you really think about, you know, the basics of you know, of Mexican food, it's definitely corn. It's chiles, right? And beans. I mean, those are the things that, those are the roots of Mexican food. And then from there you kind of build up. It's kind of like butter and cream in France, right? So, and it's the ingredients because of the weather, because of the soil. That's why it grows the best in Mexico. So I think that you know, there's another farm in Sacramento that has great peppers as well when it's super hot here, because peppers grow in the heat and they're super spicier in the heat. So I think just ingredients. I mean, I wish there was more available, or there was an easier way to kind of bring them back to the United States from Mexico. But there's a lot of farmers here that also have a lot of good chiles and a lot of good corn, a lot of good beans, that they get their inspiration from Mexico. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff here in already placed. We're not there yet, but I think there's still a lot of stuff here that we can use.
Rogelio, as another Latino, I'm very proud to see the work that you've
Thank
been
you.
doing. I'm very happy, and I want to see more successes from your side.
Thank you.
Hopefully.
Thank you.
And is there anything that you want to do as closing words, or you want to say?
I mean, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. It was definitely a pleasure. And if you ever happen to be in Laurel Heights, come by and ask for me, and you know, try to get you a table. But you know, thank you guys, and
Is it for everyone at Google?
let's do it. We can bring Spruce here. How about that?
I like that.
But yeah, I mean, thank you for listening. Thank you for hopefully being inspired, and I hope I get to see you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you.